Oh my gosh, Paco says you can hear me. Okay, don't touch the mic, Erica, and I'm gonna just not touch anything. Okay, cool. Y'all shout. Okay, there's a lot of yeses. Okay, everyone can hear. Okay, good. Shout if my sound goes out again. I'm seeing my audio input moving around on my screen, so to me that is an indication that there's some input. So if it goes out again, yeah, the chat. Oh, the chat is slow. Actually, I think it's my video that's slow. So I am in the future by about. It looks like about 10 to 15 seconds. So you guys are just lagging behind about 10 to 15 seconds. So if you don't hear me again, yeah, I won't touch anything, Segundo. If you don't hear me again, tell me as soon as you don't hear me in the chat, and then I will finagle with stuff. But I think it was user error, to be honest. So I think we're good to go. Okay, so recap where we started. So today is our second Monday doing these AMAs at 5 p.m. Pacific instead of when they used to be, which was Tuesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. This time seems to work really well for most of the people that are coming regularly because it's after work, no matter where you live in the US. If you don't like the time, say something in the comments, say something in the chat, so I'll have an idea about kind of for people that are coming, what I need to do to make sure the time works for you. And then I'll just kick it off today. One of the questions that we went through last week was, should I come with a topic? Do you guys want me to blabber on about things that I'm hearing in my coaching sessions, what I'm hearing from recruiters, what I'm hearing happening in the talent industry? Or do you want to just jump in and ask questions and then me answer them? And I think the general feedback was it's helpful if I start with something so that it warms people up. You feel a little bit more confident asking a question. But at this point, you've seen me completely flub over my mic. So anybody who is feeling nervous should just know there's nothing to be nervous about. Go ahead and ask a question. So the way we're going to do this is the way we always do it, which is that I will answer all of the questions that come through the chat. I will answer them in order, and we will wrap up for the day as soon as the questions dry up. So just popping this note back in the chat that you should ask questions in the chat. And note that I am 10 seconds ahead of you. I'm living in the future, or you're living in the past. Hard to say which one is which. But just know that I go in order of your questions. So if this is your first time joining, which I don't think is the case for most of you, but if this is your first time joining or you're watching this replay after the AMA, my name is Erika, and I coach people in technology careers. My primary focus is on helping people who are transitioning jobs and people who are trying to pivot into tech for the first time. And I help people with everything from how to tell your story, how to map all of the skills and experiences you have to the tech job or tech company that you want to work for, as well as how to prepare for your interviews. And then after you get the job, which 93% of my clients do, how to negotiate your compensation and be sure you're getting paid market value for your skills and abilities in the role that you've landed. And I was a hiring manager at Google for 5 years. And so I spent a long time in big tech myself, been at lots of different startups. I'm at a startup right now. And so I have a kind of broad perspective on what hiring managers are looking for, what executives are looking for, what your peers are looking for in the interview process. And I can answer any of your questions around big tech, what's happening in the talent market. I work with many people at a time, so I have a good sense of where there are jobs, where there aren't jobs, what's working, what's not working in the talent market. And then, of course, any questions you have about tech, any questions you have about career paths and engineering or product, I'm really here to answer all the questions that you have. This weekly session is kind of my way of giving back to the community, people who bring me lots of interesting questions, help me stay relevant, and engage with me on all the various channels that I'm on. So this time is really not about me, it's about you, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have. So I'm going to start with a topic unless in the next 10 seconds a question appears in the chat. So I'm going to take a sip of water, and then if a question appears, I'll answer the question. Otherwise, I will talk about what's happening in the job market right now. All right, we got a question. All right, Segundo. I like this question. I'm going to just put it beneath my head so that everyone can see it. Did that wrong. So Segundo's question is, do you have any idea on how the layoffs at Google and those that are impacting the open roles that are currently posted? Are these real? So there's my hypothesis about the question, and then what what I think you're getting at here. So Google just did a layoff last Friday. They laid off 12,000 people, which represents about 6% of the Google workforce. And it was an interesting layoff because the people that were laid off, that were impacted, a lot of them were quite surprised. These were people that weren't necessarily underperformers. These were folks that had been at Google for a long time, many of them. So it was a bit of a surprising layoff at Google last week. And up until the layoffs, and even now, there are roles that are posted on the Google Careers page. And I have multiple people who are in late stage interviews at Google right now. And so I think that the open roles that you're seeing that are posted have gone through multiple stages of prioritization. So keep in mind that when you lay off someone, let's say you lay off someone in marketing, but you need a new engineer, you can't necessarily repurpose that marketing person for your open engineering role. And so you still end up laying someone off while you're still actively hiring because you need a different skill set. And so I do think that the roles that are posted are actual real roles that are open. So that's kind of the real answer. Keep in mind that Google announced a hiring slowdown last July. They did the first round of reprioritization in September, and they kept culling the roles through the end of the year. And also keep in mind that these layoffs don't happen all at once. They take time. Especially for a company that large with as strong of a talent brand. I was at Google for 5 years. We never had layoffs at Google in that time. I think there have been layoffs before at Google before my time, but they're very few and far between. So it's not like an organizational muscle that gets exercised often. And so the result of that is it does take time to plan. And so all of the layoffs that we're seeing now were planned in December and are being executed after the holidays. From a combination of just like logistics and then wanting to allow employees to enjoy the holidays without worries. I think that's why these are happening now. So they were planned in December and they're executing them now, or they're planned in early January and they're being executed now. So all of the roles that are posted are real. What I think the kind of nuanced part of my answer is that they might be real, but they are definitely going to slow down hiring for a minute. So right now, if you've been on LinkedIn in the last 72 hours, you'll see these really heart-wrenching posts from Googlers who were at the company for 15 years or 8 years or 12 and a half years, and they were laid off and they were really surprised to be impacted. And so I think that what is going to be happening from a talent brand perspective behind the curtain is that there's going to be a little bit of a chill out period because you don't want to, on one hand, have people like disclosing that they were laid off after 15 years at Google, and on the other hand, have people announcing, hey, I just got an offer from Google on their LinkedIn. And so just from a talent brand optics perspective, I think we will see a slowdown for the next couple of weeks. The other thing that I would say here is that human memory is extremely fragile. And, we as a people are very good at kind of like rebounding. So in the next couple of weeks, I think they'll pick it back up with those prioritized roles that they very fastidiously kind of vetted and decided that they needed for the orgs. These are actually needed roles. And so they are going to pick back up on hiring for those roles. Segundo, let me know if that was a helpful answer. If you have follow-up questions, I'm happy to take them. If that sparked any additional questions, or if I didn't answer your question robustly enough, feel free to ask a follow-up. Okay, so the next question. After the question, would love for you to talk about what's happening and what you're hearing. So I kind of talked about this a little bit. So I wrote down a couple of points that I wanted to mention. So just some data that I think is helpful. So since this time last year, there have been almost 215,000 layoffs. It leaked today that Spotify will be doing layoffs this week. And as I mentioned when I was responding to Segundo's question, these layoffs were planned weeks ago. It takes a while to execute them, and they try to keep them under wraps. I think Google was really the only one that didn't leak. Amazon leaked early, Microsoft leaked early. And so it's really amazing that it didn't leak, and I think Spotify's is leaking, and then it will happen later in the week. And so that's a lot of tech people that are kind of on the job market. So that's something that I'm hearing from my clients. They're nervous. There's only so much that you can say to someone who's feeling, this, fear that like, well, I got laid off, but there's all these new people joining the ranks of the unemployed. How's that going to impact me? So I had some thoughts that I wanted to share with the group on that. I think that one of the things that I would share is that there will definitely be more layoffs. But also within each of those companies, because as I said before, you can't take a marketer and have them do a software engineering job and trust me, as a software engineer, you don't want me leading your marketing efforts either. So we are going to see these same companies that did layoffs hiring as well. It's just going to be much more vetted, much more prioritized roles that we are not going to, it's not going to go back to the heyday of 2021 or 2018 when companies were hiring for growth. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. But one of the things that I've been telling people is like, you have to think about layoffs as a wave in some way. Not everyone is immediately hitting the pavement and trying to start to get their next role. The employees at Google got 16 weeks of severance plus some for additional weeks of working on the job. Some companies have given up to 5 months of severance. And so you're talking about like a highly paid set of employees. Most of the Googlers that were impacted had been at the company for a long time, so they've had a lot of earning years. And so I think you're not going to see 214,000 people vying for the same job as you. It's going to kind of come in waves. And so people are going to start trying to get back into the job market on different timelines. Some people are going to take off a full year. Some people are going to try to get at it right away. And so I think that's like just mentally, it might help you to realize that like you're not competing with 214,000 people. You're competing with a much smaller pool than that. But it is a larger pool than you had to compete with in years past. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Like there are fewer roles now open than there were before, and there are more people actively looking than there were before. We used to have to passively recruit people and really try to convince them to even give us the time of day. And I don't know about you, but I used to get like 5+ recruiter emails a week. And now I think the last one I got was like multiple weeks ago. And so you're probably experiencing the same thing, like a lot less outbound, trying to get passive candidates to convert into active candidates because there are so many active candidates. Okay, cool. Hopefully that was a helpful kind of like starting point. Jessica, if there was anything that you wanted me to talk about that I didn't hit on there, I just wanted to make sure we talked about the fact that there will be more layoffs and people will re-enter the job market in waves as a way of kind of like reframing some of the fear mentality that I think people are bringing. Some of that fear is healthy though, because there definitely are more people for fewer roles. Okay, Paco. When is a good time to follow up with HR POC? So here's the thing. I don't know what POC means. I could make some guesses. I know what HR means because I think that's human resources. POC, proof of concept, post-operational curation, point of contact. Okay, when is a good time to follow up with the HR point of contact? Okay, perfect. So it depends on where, kind of where you're at. So if you are in contact with someone, a recruiter, some member of the people ops team, a member of HR, and you're actively trying to get a job at that company, my general suggestion to people is to stay in contact on a weekly basis. Thank you for all the people who are telling me what POC means. Thank you. You want to be in contact with them on a weekly basis. You don't really want to do more than that unless they're reaching out to you more than that, because you have to realize that they are also being flooded with inbounds. You want to stay top of mind, but you don't want to be the person who's nagging them. Similarly, you don't want to wait more than a week. So don't give it 3 weeks between contacts, because now you're not going to be top of mind. And when you reach out, the way that you reach out and what you say actually matters. So I write a lot of posts on Twitter and LinkedIn, just generally about how to reach out to people cold. When you're already in a conversation with HR and recruiting, there's actually not much that changes about how you reach out to them. So you always want to reference earlier conversations that you've had, things that they've taught you or told you. I talk about this concept of a charm campaign. So tell them what's going well for you in your job search, what's happening that's positive in your life. You can mention things like, hey, I just launched this project that I've been working on for 3 months. And it's really exciting to see it out there. I've had, 5 million people try, 500, however many people. It doesn't have to be 5 million. I think sometimes people get caught up in the idea that like in order to interview at these companies, you have to have had a huge scope of project before. But some sort of, I'm, moving on into final rounds with a couple of other companies, some sort of like positive things that are happening. People like optimism. Optimism makes them happy. And you're giving them new information that's making you more appealing as a candidate. So when you reach out to your HR recruiting point of contact, try to do it on a weekly basis. Don't nag them. So don't do it much more often than that unless they're reaching out to you more frequently. And then don't let more than a week lapse before you reach out to them and give them some interesting news about you that's positive, that keeps you top of mind. And also gives them information if there are actually meaningful material moves in your job search. It's good for them to know. Okay. The next thing is not a question. Segundo, it sounds like I got your question pretty well. Jessica's got the next question. Let me pop it into the chat here. Jessica, with all the layoffs, what does it look like? What does it look for to search for a growing niche when there are not a ton of jobs posted? Okay, I can't parse this sentence. It might be the end of the day for me. What does it look for to search? Oh, I see. So I think the question is, when there are a lot of jobs posted, you can actually use the job posting boards as an indication of where there's job growth. So, for example, I spent a lot of time doing engineering operations, which was a kind of a growing field within engineering functions at the time. I did it first at Google, and then I did it at my next company. And I could see, based on when I was, actually going through my job search, I was seeing a lot of other high caliber unicorn startups posting engineering operations roles. So to me, it was an indication that there's growing demand for this job. This is going to be a growing career field. So I think Jessica's question is like, without as many jobs posted, it's harder for me to use the job boards to understand if like legal operations is like a growing niche. And so, Jessica, here's my thought process here. I think in general, one of the things that I read a lot of books about management. I've got the High Growth Handbook sitting right next to me. This is a great one. I've got my mic is sitting on top of the hard thing about hard things. And one of the things that I've started to hear and see as a pattern is this idea of like embedded operations functions. So organizational design always tends to kind of like swing in one direction and then swing back to the other direction. Like everything, history repeats itself. And so I think there was a period of time where people were like, let's vertically integrate. Let's have these, kind of monolithic operations functions. And then they'll be matrixed out to the teams that they're supporting at the time. And then we'll gain a lot of efficiency here because we can redeploy them. Like they can work on HR projects for a while, and then we can pull them over and have them work on legal projects. And then we can have them work on engineering projects. But I think what we like that has swung very much in the opposite direction. And so the kind of prevailing thought that I'm seeing at kind of respectable late stage startups is this idea that like there is expertise to be built in how you run operations for legal versus HR versus engineering versus recruiting. And so each of these functions, they may not be massive operations teams, but each function deserves its own operations function. This is a philosophy that I abide by. So anytime I'm building a new function, I assume that over time that we'll have an operations subset, which will include an analytical component, as well as kind of like a programmatic component. So I'm a chief product officer. At some point, we will have product operations. And in product operations, we will have folks that focus on product analysis and then and analytics for our products. And then also people that focus on programs like our beta testing program or user feedback, NPS scores, whatever, things that kind of go across the whole product team. So hopefully that's helpful. Jessica, I do agree with you that it's much harder without a lot of jobs posted to kind of see where there's like a lot of volume of, for example, legal operations jobs. But hopefully that helps you to kind of get a sense of, at least right now, like I think the pendulum is definitely swung towards having dedicated operations functions. And so maybe that, hopefully, that's my perspective, and hopefully that's helpful to you as you think about whether that's a function that you want to get into. All right. Okay. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to do a quick call on questions, see if there's anything that I've said that has sparked other thoughts or other questions. I'm happy to dive in deeper, answer any follow-ups that y'all have. And I'm also happy to take a totally new topic if anyone has another question. Oh, I love this question. Okay. So Parminder's question is, what do I think of automation tools such as Rezi, which is an AI resume generator, and other tools that automate your job application process? So I'm a product person, right? So I spend a lot of time, and I'm also a coach, and I also help people with their careers. So I spend a lot of time looking at where automation can be helpful. And also I spend a lot of time looking on Marketplace to understand where people are offering services. And typically what I see is there is some unmet need in the market, some, automatable task or painful task. What you'll first see is you'll see it on Fiverr. So you'll see people posting like, hey, I'll rewrite your resume, or hey, I'll apply to jobs for you, or hey, I'll do, whatever the thing is. And then I'll see, people build products and services around that. And then you'll see people automating those products and services. And so I think that's really where Rezi is. I haven't seen Rezi, but I think of the use of automation, I think of it as like a first draft process. I have not perfected. I've started writing a lot recently. I have a newsletter called The Career Whispers on Substack, and I force myself to post a new article every week, which is really painful right now because I am a perfectionist and also I'm learning how to be a better writer. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is, what if I fed the prompt into ChatGPT and saw like what it came out with and maybe use that as an outline? So I'm a huge fan of using automation where you can, but I think that I would not use it. I would not use insert resume, take whatever comes out and use it. I would definitely use it as like a promising draft, because there's things that I think humans have in our knowledge sets that robots are better able to understand. For example, the use of keywords in resumes. I think robots are better than we are at that, at analyzing the data and understanding where there's traction. But I also think they might not be as good of storytellers about our stories, and they certainly don't have the information about your project. So when you're entering those quantification details, led 30 teams across, 3 work streams to implement a feature that impacted 30,000 users, you're the only one who has that information. So the structure of that bullet point is going to come from you, and the information is going to come from it. And then the way that it gets optimized in your resume will be hopefully will hopefully help with the applicant tracking system side of it, helping other robots understand it. But so I think of it as like a first draft, and similarly with job applications. I was amazed to see you can hire people on Fiverr to just spray and pray for you and apply to all the LinkedIn jobs, because I have strong feelings about cold applying that I talk about a lot on LinkedIn and on Twitter. But if, at the end of the day, anything is a numbers game, right? And so in theory, if you put in 1,000 job applications, you will get called for at least one of them. And so when I saw Fiverr's doing this, I said, it's only a matter of time before we start seeing automated services that do this. So why not? Give it a try, experiment. I just wouldn't trust the outputs, and I wouldn't bet the farm on them. Okay. Parminder, let me know if you have any follow-up questions on that one. But I am going to check out Rezi now. Okay. I got a referral today from a hiring manager at Google for a role in strategy and ops. Followed my advice. How likely is it that I'll get a call from HR? So first of all, thank you for following my advice. Isn't it easy to get a referral from a stranger? That's great. And I talk a lot about how to get referrals. I don't think I've talked about it a lot on social media, a little bit on Twitter, but I have a free referral guide a free referral strategy guide that you can pick up at coacherika.co in the free guide section. And that is what Segundo is referring to in this question. So how likely is that I'll get a call from HR? So it's really likely. So here's what happens when you get referred by an internal employee at most companies. So most companies have a default promise to their employees that if you refer someone, we will at least look at their resume. And just so you know, I think most people know this at this point, but if you cold apply, that guarantee is not there. The only guarantee you have is that robots are going to parse your resume and make a decision about whether it's interesting enough for a human to look at it. So with a referral, you're guaranteed to have a human look at your resume, and I feel very strongly that this is a positive. In my experience and in some very small scale, not peer-reviewed studies, it is shown to increase your odds of actually getting a recruiter call and actually getting to interview by 2 times. So actually 200% increase in your likelihood of getting a recruiter call. So why wouldn't you do that? Especially when you just follow my advice in the referral strategy, you can get a stranger to refer you. So it's, the likelihood is going to be based on your fit for the role. Segundo, I think I know a little bit about your background. You're pretty qualified. And strategy and ops is kind of like right up your expertise areas. So I don't think it's a zero chance you're going to get a call. I do think the timing might be really crappy because of what I said at the beginning. I think that there's going to be this like chill out period where Google is not trying to have people announce on LinkedIn that they got a job at Google or an offer amidst all of these posts from Googlers being like, Google tore my heart out and took my badge away after 16 years. There's going to be a little bit of a cool down period for that. So I think that the timing might not be perfect here. And what you might find is that you need to find either the same stranger or another stranger to refer you again in 2 to 3 weeks when the world has kind of forgotten the layoff. So to really put a fine point on what my answer there, getting referred does not increase your chances of getting the job or even getting a call from a recruiter. It on its own, but what it does is guarantee that your resume gets reviewed by a recruiter, which if your resume is well written, can increase your chances of getting that call by 200%. So the cause and effect is not the referral does not cause you to get called. It's the great resume actually getting reviewed by a human that causes you to get the call. So the same odds you would have had if you had if you get referred by any employee, you're going to have the same kind of odds increase. It'll double your odds. Okay. Let me know if there's any follow-up questions on that one. Yeah, I love this. Parminder. I would love to see your drafts. So I hate cover letters. I hate them. I think that they are so antiquated. I think resumes are antiquated too. And I hate them as well. And I just can't even, I get so offended at the idea of writing a cover letter. And so I love the idea of using ChatGPT for writing the first draft of your cover letter. I have a resume writer that I work with for some of the clients that use me for coaching. And she's really good at doing the applicant tracking system optimization and kind of like the latest tips and tricks on how to do it. But and she also writes cover letters for people, which I'm like, I can't even be bothered with this. I hate cover letters. I think it's just like labor that we make people do. Just like, here's a hoop to jump through that makes absolutely no sense because no one looks at them. But interestingly enough, there is interesting data about cover letters. I posted a tweet about this recently and I was kind of shocked to find these stats myself. So while only, I think it's like less than 30% of cover letters are read, the chances of actually getting the job increase significantly from writing a cover letter. So I think what's actually happening is there's some business logic, either business logic or human eyeball logic that are being applied. So if you have a cover letter, you're more likely to get your resume read by the recruiter. And or like you might actually just, if you don't have a cover letter at all, get ruled out by business logic by the robots. And so I love the idea of being efficient about it and having ChatGPT do it for you. The one thing I will say about ChatGPT, and I am by no means an experienced user, but there's a lot of great advice on Twitter about this. But the better the prompt that you give, the better the output. So for example, if you just put, hey, ChatGPT, can you write me a cover letter? That's like the worst prompt you could give them. But if you say, hey, ChatGPT, please write a cover letter for this role in like paste the role. I don't think you can do URLs. Maybe you can, but paste the role in there and then say using my resume and then paste your resume in there and highlight the following experience and then like give it 3 things you want it to highlight. And then you're going to get a much better cover letter. So just be aware that like it's not free, right? Like you still have to do some work to make a good output from ChatGPT. But I love the idea of using automation to write cover letters because they are vile. Yeah. Segundo, good. I do think that is the one guarantee, at least as of now. I wonder if at some point with all of the kind of secret being out that you can get a stranger to refer you, I wonder if companies will stop honoring that promise. And maybe over time, we might see that shift where they say, we'll honor the promise as long as you don't say that this is a stranger. And so I think that the game will change pretty soon, because it's pretty well known in tech that you can ask a stranger on Team Blind and for the most part find someone who will refer you with really no questions asked. So it's adding a lot more referral volume to companies, which is a lot more load on recruiters. And so I think that we might see that change over time. Paco, 100%. I feel offended with cover letters as well. Glad I'm not the only one. And I hate that like my emojis aren't coming through, but that's a really cute emoji, not a square box that Paco put in his comment. So yeah, I think they're just vile. I'm glad we all agree. Okay. I think that's the last question I see in the list. Happy to stay on if there are follow-up questions. Parminder, I do want to see some of your ChatGPT cover letters. What I'd really be interested in seeing is like a before, like a here's what it wrote, and then here's how I refined it to get it where I want it to be. Or here's what I wrote, and then here's what it wrote. I would be really interested to see the before and after on those. All right, I'm taking a pause, waiting to see if we get any more questions. And while I'm waiting, I adjusted my lighting situation. And also want to tell you a little bit more about what you can find on coacherika.co. Everything that I think you need is in the description of this video. So I include information about when the next AMA is, which is totally free to you. I include links to all of my free guides on coacherika.co, as well as information about First Round Ready, which is my digital course that packs in 8 hours worth of coaching to help you prepare for your next first round interview. It comes with a quick wins workbook, and then you can purchase the additional companion workbooks to basically make it really easy to go from like, what do I do to prepare for my next interview, to feeling really confident and prepared for your interview and have everything you need in one place. And then as well as my coaching services. So everything I think that you might need in your career search journey should be available to you in the links in the description below. And then, of course, if you're watching right now, if you don't mind, go ahead and give the video a like so that other people can find this video later and I can forevermore be remembered as the person who said they hate cover letters on YouTube. I'm sure I'm not the first person, but I might be the most senior person to ever say that on YouTube. I'm going to wait and see. Oh, I see a question. Okay, so if you have lingering questions, go ahead and stack them up. Otherwise, I will end it after this last question, this one from Segundo. All right, so the question is, what's the most current Google job list of all? Google Careers page, LinkedIn, X for X jobs. I see a role I'm interested in an X career page, but it's not on Google's. Is it real or was it cut? Ooh, that's a great question. So I'm kind of thinking about the architecture here. So the way that it works, so I was on the founding team of Verily, which was the first other bet after Google became Alphabet. And we had our roles posted on the Google Careers page. But we use a different applicant tracking system. We used Greenhouse instead of the internal Google tools. And I'm not entirely sure how they got across, but I guarantee it wasn't manual. And so my guess is that X is probably using Greenhouse or some other ATS, and it's plugging into Google Careers. That they're doing it and it's not plugging into Google Careers. So I don't know what I would say is the most likely to be up to date. I don't know. I don't feel authoritative enough to have an answer to that. But what I will say is that if I see a role that looks open, I think LinkedIn is probably the least reliable source of Google jobs, because I don't know what their batch process looks like in terms of like ingesting from whatever API they have exposed and whatever connection Google has. But it's definitely not going to be as real time as a Google to Google connection, like Google's internal servers going out to the Google Careers page. But I kind of wonder if the opposite is true for like jobs at X. So either way, I would say if you see a job posted, no matter where you see it posted, I think it's worth seeing if it's real. But I will, I think it's a fair question because it's not guaranteed that any of those jobs are actually like official real jobs. X is using a different platform. Yeah. And they asked for a cover letter. Yeah. You know what's interesting is the cover letter. I'm working with a new ATS system myself for my newest role. And they also have it's like cover letters are just like on by default. And the question is whether the question the candidate has to deal with is, are they going to completely ignore me and not give me a chance because I didn't put a cover letter, or do they not even need it? But it seems like it's always kind of like opted on. And it seems like it's like an extra step to turn it off. And so I think a lot of recruiting teams just don't take the extra step to turn off the cover letter thing. But it's up to you to decide. Do you want to write a cover letter every time? Do you want to hire someone to do it? Or do you want to ask ChatGPT to do it and just hope that it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, you have one, but no one's going to read it, but it still increases your odds of landing the job. Sorry, I couldn't give a more definitive answer for you, Segundo, about the Google job list. But I would say in this market, if you see a role posted that you're interested in, I would treat it like it's real. Use my job search referral strategy to find someone to refer you, and then you'll find out really quickly if it's real or not. All right. Okay, I'll give it 2 seconds and then we'll decide if it's time to adjourn for the evening. This has been really fun. I love when you guys ask lots of questions because I couldn't think of any of these questions myself. So it's great to hear them because it gives me a sense of what you guys are thinking about, what you're struggling with, and allows me to be really helpful to you in real time. Okay, I'm seeing a thumbs up. Anybody else? If you want to give a thumbs up in the chat or say something to indicate that you're not planning on typing out a question, that would be great. Once I get a couple of those, we can go ahead and wrap up for the day. All right, I'm not seeing anything in the chat. So this is official. There's a lag. So if a question comes in now, I'm going to direct you to the Dream Job Ready community, which is a free community that I host on Discord where you can meet other job seekers. I just added roles this weekend. And so you can actually indicate where you're at in your job search and find other people who are in the same spot. We also have these like peer mock rooms that you can hop into with another person and do a mock interview together. So I think it's this really cool resource. I answer questions that people post and hang out there. We actually had someone today announce that after, I think he had 98 days of trying to find a job, and he's a software engineer and he wasn't able to find a job. He joined our community, got the first round ready course, did the work, and landed a job within 2 weeks. I think about 2 weeks ago, he was in this AMA. It was my first time meeting him. And so it was really exciting because we get to celebrate each other's wins and root for each other. So check out the link is in the description of the video if you want to join Dream Job Ready. And if you're in Dream Job Ready, stop being shy and ask more questions and engage with other people. Trying to figure out how to push people off of the introvert shelf and engage more in the community. So okay, we'll wrap it up for today. I'll see all of y'all hopefully next week, 5 p.m. Pacific time, Monday. And if there's any questions you have in the interim, please either put comments on this video and I'll answer them, or join Dream Job Ready community and ask Coach Erika questions, and I'm happy to help you. And I know it's really hard times right now in tech, but just keep in mind, like, you will find a job. 93% of the people that I work with land their jobs. And I would assume that at least 80% of the people that don't work with me also land a job that they love as well. So keep at it. You will land your dream job. Get smart about your job search. Use systems like the ones that I talk about and write about in my newsletter, in the courses, and in Dream Job Ready, and here in our weekly AMA. So I'll look forward to seeing y'all again next week. Have a wonderful Monday. And thank you for joining.